The Panama Canal, 25,000 dead connect two oceans. Introduction. Hook, Panama, 1906. An American engineer stands at the edge of a pit, watching steam shovels claw at mud. Below, he sees something that makes his blood freeze, a human hand protruding from the earth. Then another, and another. The excavation has unearthed a mass grave, hundreds of bodies dumped decades ago by the French. No markers, no names, just bones mixed with the same dirt now being moved to build the canal. He orders work to continue. The bodies are scooped up with the mud, dumped with the fill. Building the Panama Canal required moving 200 million cubic meters of earth. No one counted how much of that earth was human remains. The French dream. De Lesseps' delusion. Ferdinand de Lesseps stood before French investors, radiating confidence. He had built the Suez Canal, a triumph that made him a national hero. Now he would build another, a canal across Panama, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It would be humanity's greatest engineering achievement. De Lesseps was 74 years old. He was also catastrophically wrong about everything. His plan was simple. Dig a sea-level canal straight across Panama, just like Suez. No locks, no complications, just 80 kilometers of digging. He estimated 8 years and $214 million. The French public, dazzled by his previous success, invested heavily. 22,000 workers were recruited. Ships carried them to Panama, where jungle, disease, and death waited. The French arrived in 1881. Within months, they realized Panama was nothing like Egypt. Suez was desert, dry, flat, predictable. Panama was rainforest, humid, mountainous, deadly. It rained 250 days per year. Rivers flooded without warning. The jungle was alive with creatures that killed, but the real killers were microscopic. The invisible enemy. Mosquitoes and death, yellow fever and malaria devastated the French. At the time, no one knew mosquitoes transmitted these diseases. Medical theory blamed bad air from swamps, miasma. French doctors opened hospital windows for fresh air, allowing mosquitoes to swarm in and infect patients. Hospitals became death traps. Yellow fever symptoms began with headache and fever, then jaundice, skin turning yellow as the liver failed, then black vomit, internal bleeding filling the stomach, then death, usually within a week. Survival rate for severe cases, nearly zero. Malaria was slower but equally deadly. Fever cycles, burning hot then Sometimes they buried workers. The French used dynamite extensively. Black powder charges were drilled into rock, ignited, and blown apart. But Panama's unstable geology made blasting unpredictable. Explosions triggered massive landslides. In 1884, a blast triggered a slide that buried an entire work camp. 40 men vanished under thousands of tons of mud. Recovery was impossible. The camp became a tomb. Steam shovels clawed at the cut day and night. Operators worked 2-hour shifts in suffocating heat. The shovels frequently broke, parts rusted in the humidity, boilers exploded, gears stripped. Repairs required workers to climb into machinery. Crushed limbs were common. So were amputations, performed without anesthesia, using saws meant for wood. Train tracks carried excavated earth away, but they couldn't be laid fast enough. As the cut deepened, tracks had to be constantly relocated. Workers laid rails on unstable ground. Trains derailed regularly, spilling earth back into the cut, killing crew members. It was Sisyphean, endless work producing minimal progress. The financial collapse and scandal. By 1888, the French company was hemorrhaging money. The canal was nowhere near complete. Disease continued killing workers. Equipment rusted in the jungle. Costs had exploded to over $287 million, more than the original budget. De Lesseps refused to admit defeat. He proposed a lock canal instead of sea level, a fundamental change that proved his original plan was fantasy. But it was too late. In February 1889, the company declared bankruptcy. 800,000 French investors lost their savings. The scandal rocked France. Politicians had accepted bribes to promote the project. Trials followed. De Lesseps was sentenced to prison but never served time due to age and illness. He died in 1894, delusional, believing the canal would be finished. The Panama site was abandoned. Equipment was left to rust. Buildings decayed. Jungle reclaimed cleared areas within months, and the bodies remained. Thousands of French and Caribbean workers buried in unmarked graves throughout the jungle. The French attempt cost approximately 22,000 lives. Most died from disease, others from accidents, landslides, and violence. Their graves are lost, their names forgotten. The jungle holds them still. The American takeover. Roosevelt's obsession. Theodore Roosevelt became US president. He was obsessed with American power projection. A canal across Central America would allow the US Navy to move between oceans quickly. It was strategic necessity. But Panama was part of Colombia. When Colombia refused to sell canal rights on American terms, Roosevelt supported a Panamanian independence rebellion. American warships prevented Colombian troops from suppressing the revolt. Panama became independent in 1903. 3 days later, Panama sold canal rights to the United States for $10 million. It was naked imperialism. Roosevelt later admitted, "I took the canal zone and let Congress debate." But it worked. Americans controlled the land. Now they needed to succeed where France had failed. Gorgas and the war on mosquitoes. The Americans learned from French failure. Dr. William Gorgas, chief sanitary officer, insisted mosquito control was essential. He had proven in Cuba that eliminating mosquito breeding sites prevented yellow fever. But many American officials didn't believe him. Miasma theory still had adherents. Gorgas fought bureaucratic resistance for 2 years. Finally, in 1905, a yellow fever outbreak convinced authorities to let him work. He launched total war on mosquitoes. Workers drained swamps, poured oil on standing water, installed screens on buildings, fumigated homes, and eliminated any container that could hold water. They imported gambusia fish to eat mosquito larvae in canals. They cut grass and brush near habitation, removing mosquito resting places. The campaign worked. Yellow fever cases dropped from hundreds to dozens, then to zero by 1906. Malaria declined dramatically. For the first time, the canal was buildable, but disease still killed. Pneumonia, dysentery, typhoid, and accidents continued claiming lives. The Americans would ultimately lose about 5,600 workers, far fewer than the French, but still thousands of dead. And unlike the French, Americans kept detailed records. We know their names. The American excavation industrial scale death. The Americans redesigned everything. Instead of a sea-level canal, they built a lock canal. Ships would be lifted 26 meters above sea level by locks, cross an artificial lake, then be lowered back to sea level. This required less excavation, but still required moving 150 million cubic meters of earth. The Culebra Cut was the bottleneck. Americans attacked it with industrial efficiency. Steam shovels operated 24/7. Trains carried earth away on an intricate rail network. At peak, 6,000 workers labored in the cut simultaneously. Dynamite blasts were timed precisely. Accidents happened constantly. Steam shovel operators earned high wages but faced extreme danger. The shovels were massive, 95 tons, capable of moving 8 cubic meters per scoop, but they operated on unstable ground. Landslides could bury a shovel in seconds. Operators had to jump clear or be buried alive. Several didn't make it. Train accidents were the leading cause of death. Hundreds of trains moved daily through the cut. Collisions, derailments, and brake failures killed dozens. In 1908, 2 loaded trains collided head-on. The crash was heard kilometers away. 15 men died. Bodies were so mangled that identification was impossible. Dynamite work was suicidal. Charges were drilled deep, packed with explosives, and detonated. But unstable geology meant unexpected results. Premature detonations killed drillers. Delayed explosions killed those who returned to investigate. Flying rock killed workers hundreds of meters away. Official records show 60 deaths from explosives. Unofficial estimates are higher. The workers, Caribbean labor, American racism. The workforce was segregated and unequal. White American workers received high wages, good housing, and medical care. They operated machinery and supervised. Black Caribbean workers, primarily from Barbados, Jamaica, and Martinique, received low wages, poor housing, and minimal care. They did the most dangerous work: digging, hauling, and dynamiting. This wasn't accident, it was policy. Americans considered Caribbean workers expendable. Death rates among black workers were triple those of white workers. When a black worker died, he was buried quickly in a segregated cemetery. When a white worker died, the body was sent home with ceremony. Caribbean workers understood the injustice but had no choice. Poverty in their home islands was severe. Canal wages, though low by American standards, were fortune by Caribbean standards. Thousands came, knowing the risks. Thousands died. Thousands more were injured and sent home with no compensation. Women worked too, though invisibly in official records. They cooked, cleaned, and did laundry. Some were nurses. Others were prostitutes. Brothels operated openly, spreading venereal disease. women also died from disease, childbirth complications, and violence, but their deaths were rarely recorded. The Gamboa dike flooding the valley. The canal's design required creating Gatun Lake, an artificial lake covering 425 square kilometers. To create it, the Chagres River would be dammed. The valley would flood, submerging villages, forests, and burial grounds. Thousands of workers lived in the valley. They would need to evacuate before flooding, but some refused to believe it would happen. Others had nowhere to go. When the Gamboa dike was dynamited in October 1913, allowing water to flood the valley, some workers were still there. Official records claim everyone evacuated safely. Unofficial accounts tell different stories. Workers reported seeing people scrambling for high ground as water rose. Some made it, others were swept away. Bodies were never found. They're entombed beneath Gatun Lake. The lake also submerged the French graves. Thousands of French and Caribbean workers buried between 1881 and 1889 were flooded. Their bones rest beneath the lake that ships now cross. Sailors on vessels transiting the canal have no idea they're floating above a submerged graveyard. The completion. August 15th, 1914. August 15th, 1914. The canal officially opened. The first ship, the cargo vessel Ancon, transited successfully. It was triumph. Headlines proclaimed American engineering superiority. Roosevelt, though no longer president, took credit. The opening ceremony was modest. World War I had just begun in Europe, overshadowing the event. But for canal workers, there was no ceremony at all. They simply moved to the next job, or returned home, or were buried in the jungle. The final cost, $375 million, equivalent to about $10 billion today. The final death toll, approximately 27,000, over both French and American periods.